This is CBC Compass.
This is Monday, March 16th. Here's what's happening now on Prince Edward Island. We begin actually tonight with breaking news and sweeping new measures to deal with COVID-19 on PEI. The government has declared a public health emergency. Financial aid is coming. An initial emergency contingency fund has now been set up. And while more islanders are being tested, there is still only one confirmed case here. On a national level, Canada is now closing its borders to most non-residents as Ottawa, the country, tries to contain the spread of COVID-19. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Compass tonight. I'm Louise Martin. We have some breaking news for you this hour. Just moments ago, the province declared a public health emergency. There is now also a $25 million emergency contingency fund for islanders, employees, and employers affected by COVID-19. And starting tomorrow, there will be a new phone line to help island employers that will operate every day from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. And that number, as you can see on your screen there, is 1-866-222-1751. So this all just happened moments ago, really. A live press conference was called late in the day at 5 p.m. Atlantic time, to be exact. So what does all of this mean for you at home tonight? A public health emergency, what is that? So Wayne Thibodeau joins me now live outside with some more of those details. So go through what this means, this public health emergency, Wayne.
Well, Louise, this has been an unprecedented day. There's no question on Prince Edward Island. 2 news conferences, all trying to keep up to date on this ever-moving and evolving story. What basically this means, this public health emergency, is it gives the province incredible powers to be able to deal with this health emergency. Let's hear from Chief of Health Officer, Dr. Heather Morrison.
Now is the time now is the time to do so, and it allows us to make the decisions that we may need to in the days ahead. It also makes sure that we're doing everything we can to keep all of us, our families and communities safe.
So, Louise, what that effectively means is that the province will now be able to ban all public gatherings and put the resources it needs in place, both health and otherwise, to deal with this emergency. Now, during the news conference earlier today, I talked to Dr. Morrison and I was asking her about whether she feels islanders are responding to this emergency. She says not everybody is taking it as seriously as they should, and this could be one of the reasons why the province has decided to take this step to declare this public emergency, which is effective immediately. Now let's hear from PEI's Public Safety Minister.
Minister of Justice and Public Safety, I know that everyone is anxious, and rightfully so. But right now, we have to remain calm. We have to do our individual parts.
All right, so that was Public Safety Minister Bloise Thompson there. So Wayne, can you give us any more details when it comes to this financial aid package that was also announced today by the province, this emergency contingency fund?
Exactly. Now, this is something that other provinces are looking at as well. The province says it will have more details to release in the days ahead. But what we do know, as you mentioned, it's a $25 aid package. We should point out that the Premier, during his news conference just at 5 o'clock today, mentioned this is just the beginning. He expects that there will be more financial aid needed to help get Prince Edward Island through this crisis. There's a toll-free number set up where people will be able to call for some more information. They're also going to be able to be checking on critical infrastructure. Are we getting the resources we need in this province, both medical and otherwise? And they're exploring compensation. Now, the news release specifically mentions childcare workers, but they're also talking about compensation for other people, including those who wouldn't qualify for employment insurance. So all of that is still being worked out. As we said, this news conference just about an hour ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many questions about this, right, Wayne, from, seasonal workers to self-employed people and how they might fit into this whole puzzle. So, of course, we'll be hearing more details in the coming days. What about other developments? We know this is a lot of information you at home tonight to give you off the top of the show, but it's important we do. What about other developments that we heard today, Wayne?
Well, that's right. The province has held its normal news conference at 1 o'clock. Every day around 1 or 1:30, the province plans to update Islanders on what's going on. So that seems a long time ago now with so many developments this afternoon. But earlier today, the province did confirm a bit of good news, I guess, at this point. There is still only one confirmed case of COVID-19 in Prince Edward Island. The province has also confirmed to us that about 120 people have been tested, about 22 of those this morning alone. Now, we do know a little bit more about this one individual case. This woman was on a cruise. We did know that. We were able to confirm the name of the cruise line. And something that Islanders may be interested in knowing, there were 3 other Islanders on that cruise at the time. Now, they have been told to self-isolate at this point in time, and none of them are exhibiting any symptoms. We should also point out that retired doctors, nurses, and medical professionals, they have all been called in to see if they will be able to help the medical system deal with the emergencies that they are facing. And at this point in time, Dr. Morrison says everything's on the table as the province tries to deal with COVID-19.
All right, I appreciate this live update, Wayne. I know you just stopped watching that live press conference, so really appreciate you getting that all together in time for us. Thank you. It's Wayne Thibodeau live for us tonight. Now, today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new travel restrictions as well, with some notable exceptions.
We will be denying entry to Canada to people who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents. This measure will carve out some designated exceptions, including for air crews, diplomats, immediate family members of Canadian citizens, and, at this time, U.S. citizens.
So these new restrictions on entry to Canada come into effect on Wednesday. All Canadians traveling abroad are advised to come home now, but almost all international flights will now be funneled to airports in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Calgary. At airports, all international travelers will face stepped-up screening by Canada Border Service agents and are expected to self-isolate for those 2 weeks. Well, in case you missed things that happened over the weekend, there were a number of updates from the province Saturday and Sunday. So as we told you, PEI had its first confirmed case of COVID-19, a woman in her 50s who recently returned home from a cruise. So she came home on March 7th, began experiencing symptoms 3 days later. She was confirmed positive for the virus on Saturday. And the province says it is currently investigating anyone she may have come into contact with. So then on Sunday, the province restricted visits to long-term care facilities on PEI. No one is allowed to visit private or government-run nursing homes. Health PEI is also moving forward toward essential services only and postponing any non-essential appointments in the system. And then on Friday evening, the province announced all childcare centres will close beginning Tuesday until further notice. As well, we heard public schools across the island will be closed for an additional 2 weeks after March break. They're set, for now anyway, to reopen on April 6th. Mark Arend's ski park is now closed for the season. So, like you, lots of questions tonight, especially from parents who have children in daycare. For staff and managers of daycare centres, lots of uncertainty to head. Now, licensed daycares will close tomorrow. We heard that earlier. Then late today, in that press conference just moments ago, non-licensed daycares were also advised to close their doors tomorrow as well. Brian Higgins spoke to some frontline workers today and has more details for us.
Louise, the big question for parents, where to send their kids starting tomorrow. And for people who work in daycare centers and for the people who run them, questions about what this means for their livelihood.
Vanessa Traynor picked up her daughter from daycare for the last time. The daily ritual is now on pause. The province-wide shutdown of childcare centers is putting pressure on families like hers.
I'll be leaving work, yes. Unfortunately, I'm hoping to do some work at home. It's still up on the air right now. It's been the first day, but just waiting like a lot of people, I would say.
The shutdown affects more than 70 private and public childcare centres across the island. They employ upwards of 500 people. Starting tomorrow, those people will no longer be working.
We're like deer in the headlights, really. We found out last night that our work's going to be shut down on a Tuesday, and we were all texting each other, panicking, like what's to come.
The province says it's looking for clarity on what compensation may be coming to daycare workers and to daycare businesses. The manager of this facility says the province is sending her daily updates by email, but many questions remain unanswered.
But it is a little scary because we don't know what to expect. Staff are worried about getting paid. I'm worried about paying bills. So hopefully we'll get the answers to those soon.
Louise, people I spoke to today in the daycare community say shutting down is the right thing to do. They say they're willing to cooperate to do what's best to fight this virus. Answers to pressing questions would go a long way to making the way forward clearer.
Thank you for this, Brian. Brian Higgins reporting for us today. Now, remember, that is now licensed and unlicensed childcare centers. And so in addition to that, the province says it plans to keep schools closed for 2 weeks after March break. And officials hope this will mitigate the spread of COVID-19 on PEI. But there's lots of work to be done on just how that will impact students and teachers. Jessica Doria-Brown has that part of the story.
There are still many details to be established here, including exactly how remote education might work and how families without reliable access to the internet might access it. But Education Minister Brad Trivers has been clear this is not an extension of March break. He says the Department of Education, in collaboration with the English and French school boards, are working on continuity plans and are optimistic that the curriculum can be delivered to students at home.
We don't want to jeopardize this school year. We would like to see it, continue so that people can continue to progress. But we're going to have to review things as we approach April 6th and see where we're at with the situation. And of course, as always, take our lead from the Chief Public Health Officer.
What that means is it's not yet clear whether this delay could mean an extension to the school year. The PEI Home and School Federation says closing schools was the right call. Even though it'll put added pressure on staff, students, and families, officials are hopeful learning can continue in some form.
I think what it'll take is a lot of creativity, and I'm sure our teachers are up for that challenge. I know I'm a college instructor myself, and I'm in a similar boat, and we'll get it done, and we'll be creative and flexible and try to do what's best for our learners.
And right now, the government is considering reopening schools on April 6th, but in a situation that is changing so quickly, officials have already warned that that could change. For now, they're asking students and teachers to stay out of the schools so they can be cleaned, and officials will continue to work on this plan for remote education that would get started March 23rd when students were set to resume class. Jessica Doria-Brown, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Some federal government workers on PEI were sent home today. They include employees at the Department of Veterans Affairs in Charlottetown, as well as taxation employees in Summerside and Charlottetown. The union representing employees at Veterans Affairs says managers will be meeting with their staff to determine who will work from home and just how. But the union's understanding is that everyone will continue to be paid.
So in our collective agreement, we do have a clause that says due to circumstances beyond your control, there is a leave provision called 699 leave. And because this is a situation, it's unprecedented, we haven't had this happen before, that leave will be approved.
Meanwhile, about 70% of the workers at the Summerside Taxation Centre are still on the job. Only those considered non-essential were sent home today. But anyone who deals directly with delivering benefits to Canadians is still at work. The union representing those workers say they've been told managers are looking for ways to prevent the transmission of COVID-19 at the workplace, including spreading everyone out into the spaces left vacant by employees who were sent home. Many nationwide retailers and operators have shut down. The latest to close their doors include Good Life Fitness clubs and the clothing store Aritzia. Even Tim Hortons is taking drastic measures to flatten the curve. The coffee chain is closing seating in all its locations. That is effective tomorrow and until further notice. Only takeout and drive-through service will be available. Starbucks implemented a similar no seating policy today and has also closed some locations. Island-owned restaurants are also taking extra precautions. Some are doing extra cleaning, reducing how many customers they let in, or even shutting down altogether. Tony Davis reports.
This Summerside restaurant isn't taking chances with its customers. It's closing its doors because of COVID-19.
Well, what factor into it is ultimately we take into consideration our staff health And a large demographic of our customers are senior citizens. With this disease, you don't know when somebody is infected by it or affected by it. I just don't want to put my staff at risk, and I don't want to put our customers at risk as well.
In Charlottetown, this pub is cutting its hours and delivering meals to customers curbside in their cars. The Old Triangle and the Old Dublin pub usually host big parties every St. Patrick's Day, but this year they're on hold for 2 months until May 17th.
It just didn't feel right with all the rightful concerns within the community today. Just did not feel right celebrating and putting too many people in close quarters.
The Old Dublin is also limiting the number of people allowed into the restaurant. Many other island restaurants are stepping up their cleaning efforts, reducing hours, and putting more space between tables. It's all in an effort to reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19 while keeping their doors open. Tony Davis, CBC News, Charlottetown.
And there are lots of closures and cancellations because of COVID-19, and we're trying to keep track of all of them for you. You can visit our website, cbc.ca/PEI, for the very latest updates and cancellations. And if you do need to report a closure, you can call our cancellation hotline. The number there is 1-877-236-9350. And a reminder from the province on symptoms of COVID-19. Those include fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. If you do experience any symptoms, stay at home, then call 811. You will be screened and, if necessary, directed for an appointment for testing. And if you have any questions at all, PEI has set up an information line. It's toll-free. That number is 1-800-958-6400. You can leave a message there, and you'll get a call back within 24 hours from the Chief Public Health Office. All right, it's time for our first look at the weather now. Jay Scotland is away tonight. He'll be back tomorrow, so we are very grateful to have Ryan Snodden in Halifax filling in for us this evening.
That's right. Thanks very much, Louise. We do have a few things to track this week, including the arrival of spring, which will arrive in the very early morning hours just after midnight on Friday. So we can at least have that to welcome this week. High temperatures today, it was a little on the chilly side, not only with these highs of -2 to -5, but the northerly wind today, which was driving in, sustained at 20, gusting to 40 kilometers per hour. That had a little bite to the air, no question about it. Pretty quiet overall, though, a cloudy day, but some breaks of sun in there as this area of high pressure was sitting just off to our south. Now, as we look forward, we've got a couple of lows to track. This one off to the north is holding hands with this low south of the Great Lakes, and that is what's going to be bringing in some wet weather in the form of some snow and then changing over to a little bit of some drizzle as we roll into the Tuesday night and Wednesday time period. Here's how things are going to play out. So there's that cloud cover you can see tonight. We are clearing out. It's going to be a cold one tonight, minus double digits island-wide, and so a chilly start to the day on Tuesday. Some sunshine early, increasing clouds, and then here comes that snow, which we'll track in for Tuesday evening into the overnight. And then note that we could see some of that mixing, a brief change over to some drizzle as we move into the early morning hours of Wednesday. And then we're clearing out and we're back into some sun and cloud for a couple of days this week in terms of Wednesday and Thursday. And then our next system will start to approach and move in on Friday, which, as I mentioned to Louise, will be the arrival of spring. We'll talk about that with your full 7-day forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate that. There's much more still to come on Compass tonight before 7 o'clock. Coming up, PEI Premier Dennis King will join us from his home via FaceTime to speak to you at home tonight. More from the new measures announced today by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and all those travel restrictions. And we continue to track the financial impact of all of this on businesses and, of course, the markets. All that is still ahead. Next, weather with Ryan, as you just saw, who's in for Jay tonight. Compass will be back in just over 3 minutes' time. Stay with us. Time to take a look at the full forecast now. Jay Scotland is away tonight. And guess what? Spring is just around the corner. There's hope. So Ryan Snodden, wet weather is coming. What should we expect exactly?
Yeah, that's right, Louise. We do have some very spring-like weather for the first day of spring on Friday. Wasn't really feeling all that spring-like today, that's for sure. Temperatures right now anywhere from -3 to -6. It's pretty chilly out there when you factor in the winds, which are sustained in the 15 to 20 kilometer per hour range and gusting upwards of 30 to 40 for most of the day, though they have backed off most recently. But yeah, that has been the flow today, right from the north off the Gulf, and it has been a chilly feel to the day, no question. Clouds have been dominant and will continue to be dominant for the next couple of hours, but we will see some partly cloudy skies overnight tonight. That area of high pressure in firm control. Next weather maker rolls in throughout the day tomorrow. That's going to increase the cloud cover and will also bring us, some snowfall. Here's how things are going to play out. So slight risk of a flurry with that cloud cover over the next couple of hours. Note as those skies clear, those temperatures tumble, and we are starting Tuesday morning widespread into the minus double digits across the island, anywhere from -8 to -12 up west into the Summerside region, around -12 in the east. We're looking at, again, widespread double digits, a little milder right along the coast near -7 in places like Georgetown. Now, as we walk you through tomorrow, note the sun early, increasing clouds throughout the morning, becoming mainly cloudy into the afternoon, but we're dry for the bulk of the day. It's around this time tomorrow when we'll start to watch some of that snow working its way in from the west. Now, high temperatures tomorrow in that 0 to 1 degree range for tomorrow. Winds are going to be increasing from the south. They will be sustained at 20 to 30, gusting 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. So it will have certainly turning into a bit of a breezy afternoon. Now, picking things up at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, you can see the snow pushing across the island. And with that southerly flow, we are talking about that change over to some rain, but it's not going to happen until the very early morning hours of Wednesday. With that snowfall through the 11 p.m., and there's that little bit of a mix you saw there in the last few frames before that system departs, that is where we do have the potential to see a little bit of drizzle and a little bit of a messy mix to the early morning hours of Wednesday. We'll cloud up again through Thursday, but still a solid mix of sun and cloud on Thursday, and then we are again talking about that next weather maker for spring on Friday. Now, in terms of snowfall, with this system that is coming in for Tuesday night, and you can see where it rolls across the island here, we're looking at a widespread couple of centimeters to as much as 5 centimeters. You can see the model indicating that for areas in the east, but generally speaking, 2 to 5 centimeters. Then you factor in that little bit of drizzle that may coat things on top early morning Wednesday. Nothing to write home about, but perhaps a little bit to shovel off the driveway, the sidewalk, or at the very least, slide it off your car on Wednesday morning, rather. We will see some lingering flurries early Wednesday and then clearing sun and cloud. Thursday, also a mix of sun and cloud. There is spring, and it looks like a very spring-like day on Friday with the rain. Some pretty gusty winds coming in with that system as well. Jay will have full details on that in the coming days. Looks like we'll clear to a bit of a messy mix with a chance of showers or flurries on Saturday, but some sunshine and then sun and cloud for the rest of the weekend. That is your forecast now. Louise, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. We'll see you a bit later on. Now it's time for our photo of the day. And what a beautiful visitor. Lauren McDermott sent us this from Albany. This is an owl perched on the back deck and stayed there for about an hour. Wow, what a beautiful shot. Look at those eyes. Wise owl. Maybe you'll give us some answers. All right, thank you so much. You know we love to put your photos on Compass. Do send them to us by email, or you can always tag us on social media. Coming up, there is still just one confirmed case of COVID-19 on PEI, but lots of you have lots of questions about how the province is handling and still preparing for COVID-19. There's now a health emergency been declared. Tonight, Premier Dennis King answers some of those questions from his own self-isolation at home. Our conversation ahead on Compass.
I'm Mitch Cormier. Coming up Tuesday on Island Morning, MP Wayne Easter will help us understand about the announced changes to the EI program and how you can take advantage of those programs if you're not able to work because of COVID-19 and the concerns over coronavirus. It's coming up Tuesday on 96.1 FM.
PEI Premier Dennis King, who is in isolation himself right now, joins me tonight via FaceTime from his home. Nice to see you. How are you feeling, Premier?
Nice to see you, Louise. I'm feeling absolutely wonderful. Been busy as I've ever been, but just doing it from home instead of the office. But thanks for that. My family and I, all of us are feeling great.
That's great. So no symptoms, and that means you have not been tested.
That's right. No symptoms, feeling great, and business as usual, as much as you can do so by being self-isolated.
Now, I know you put out a video on social media, but here's another chance to speak directly to Islanders at home tonight watching. What do you want them to know from you tonight, from their Premier?
Well, look, first and foremost, my priority is to make sure each and every one of you are as safe as possible, and we're doing everything that we possibly can to contain and mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in Prince Edward Island. To date, we've had one confirmed case, and we're bracing for more, obviously, like the rest of Canada, but just really working hard with our public health agencies and with all the health professionals across PEI to do everything we can to get through this very difficult and unprecedented time.
Now, I know we've been getting a lot of questions, as you can imagine, from Islanders, and I'm sure you won't be able to answer them, all of them right now, but let's try. Do you feel that enough is being done at this time?
I really do. I mean, I think it's a fair question when you go through any situation like this that we're going through to always ask, is there enough? I think, there's like two joints to this approach that we're taking. And one is the health perspective right off the bat through Dr. Morrison, through the Public Health Office, to try to do everything we can to contain and mitigate COVID. The other side of this is the economic and social impacts that this is having today and will continue to have into the future. So we are working very, very hard. I mean, it's all that we've been focusing on. We're doing everything we possibly can to, in very difficult circumstances, to try to meet the challenges that come to us. And I feel very comfortable and confident that we're in a good place. But it is a changing, shifting sand, so to speak. So we have to be as prepared as we can for the unknowns.
Yeah, we'll get to some of those impacts. So starting maybe with tourism, and how reliant this province is on that sector. How concerned are you about, how big a hit are we going to get here? How of a lasting economic impact?
Well, I think that's one of the questions, Louise, that we're not able to answer right now. But I am terribly concerned. Tourism is one of the top economic generators in this province year after year, and we've been on a really good trajectory for the last number of years. And there's no question that our numbers this year will be down significantly because of what is taking place worldwide. And so that is a huge concern. I'm hoping that the impacts will be short term and we can begin to get through the recovery of this. I've talked today with the executive director of TaiPi, trying to get a better sense of what their membership is feeling and to give us some insight into what we can be doing now. And as we work through this difficult situation to make sure we mitigate this and try to get through it to the best we can. But I'm very, very concerned about tourism and all of our economic generators.
Yeah, I mean, so many industries will feel an impact from this, from farming to tourism, as you mentioned, to everything else. So let's talk about the help that the province is indeed going to offer. So the financial help, that's been a big question we've been getting. And this business continuity plan, and that was Minister Trivers mentioned that over the weekend. Any details you can give us?
Well, I mean, I think details will come out in the next few hours as we work through it. But essentially, what we have to put in place an emergency contingency fund to make sure Islanders who are directly impacted immediately have the opportunity to get some money into their pockets and to keep some semblance of normal life. So that will be somewhere in the vicinity of $20 to $25 million as an initial offering, and that will be for Islanders, businesses, or small business owners, employees who are directly impacted by COVID-19, whether they have to self-isolate, etc. So that will be the initial offering. Details to follow, of course, in terms of how those programs will roll out. But I've asked my ministers and all of the individuals working on this to be focused on hours and days, not weeks. We understand the urgency to get it out, and we will be working to get it out. And that will also mirror some of the federal funds that I know our federal partners are working on trying to get into the hands of Islanders and Canadians as well on a timely basis.
All right, Premier King, we're just going to take a quick break here on Compass and come back with a few more questions for you after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Compass and welcome back to Premier Dennis King tonight. Good to see you again. And so we'll continue with some of our questions. And one of them coming in from a viewer said, at what point would you consider implementing an order to enforce people self-isolate beyond a recommendation after they return from travel?
Yeah, I think that's a question that I talk daily with Dr. Morrison about. We obviously take our advice on these health procedures from Dr. Morrison, who was working with Dr. Tam in Ottawa, who was taking direction from the World Health Organization. So there's lots of research, science, and most up-to-date information that comes from those tables. And we utilize that advice in the process of coming to these decisions. I think Dr. Morrison indicated today that there's a heightened sense and a need for people to take the self-isolation more seriously. I know it's something that I have taken seriously. I have been doing it under the precautionary advice that the Public Health Office has been offering. And I think she is continuing efforts to make sure that people take this seriously, not just for themselves, but for the community at large. So we will continue to monitor that. And this has changed on an hourly basis almost for the last 6 or 7 days. And we fully expect that it will continue to do so. But those measures will be implemented with Dr. Morrison's advice and request, and we've been doing well so far with that, and that's the approach we will continue from a health-related perspective.
And I know government really is leaving the health issues and questions really directed at the Public Health Office, right?
Well, listen, I mean, the procedures that are put in place by legislation it sets up for Dr. Morrison to be the lead on this. We consult, I've talked to Dr. Morrison 6-7 times each day for the last 4 or 5 days. So we're very much in lockstep with what's taking place and what's going on. There are measures she needs to take that she needs me as the Lieutenant Governor in Council, as the Premier, to implement, and that's what we were doing, and we will continue to do that. I think Islanders feel they're very, very well served by Dr. Morrison, and I know I'm very proud to work closely with her on this important issue.
What have your discussions been around potentially closing provincial borders? Lots of people wondering why the bridge isn't closed to non-essential crossings. So would that even be a consideration?
Oh, I would think that down the road, if things continue to escalate and perhaps get out of control, that would be something we'd obviously have to look at along the way. Through this process, Louise, one of the difficult jobs of being Premier, working with Dr. Morrison, et cetera, is trying to really find that fine line between remaining calm while being vigilant and making sure we're doing every possible thing we can do to keep Islanders safe and healthy. And it's a difficult situation. It changes moment by moment, but we're really trying to make our decisions based on the best information that we have coming from Dr. Morrison, from Dr. Tam, and all of her colleagues across the country. So it's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we're trying to thump our chests and say we're better than somebody else. We're really just trying to come up with the most fundamental, and informed way to get through a very difficult situation.
You know, you saw some of the panic buying from people running out to get toilet paper and things like that. And so it has raised a lot of questions about, worried particularly because we're an island and we depend so much for things to come from the mainland. Will stores run out of stuff? Is there something being done to ensure that shipments of goods are still, coming onto the island?
Look, there's a lot of impulse shock buying that's taking place here. And that is based more just on emotion than it is in reality. One of the things that we talk about every day through our emergency measures organizations is the supply chain that is in place. It is strong, it is consistent, there's no shortage of things. We are working to make sure that continues. When the announcement came out last week about international travel, travelers needing to self-isolate for 14 days. We immediately went to work with our trucking community to make sure that they were declared essential service so we could keep that supply chain going. So look, we always keep an eye on these things. We're not at a heightened level of concern in terms of our supply right now. And I would encourage all Islanders to remember who we are as Islanders. And you going out and buying all the toilet paper and stockpiling is not helping your neighbor along the way. So if we could just be a little bit more calm along the way, I think things will roll along a little bit better. But it's fair. Islanders have a heightened sense of awareness and concern, particularly since Saturday when we've announced the first confirmed case of COVID-19 here in PEI.
I will end our conversation by asking you, what's it like being in isolation, and when have you circled the date on the calendar when you're done?
Well, I know March 26th is the day I'm free, is the day of freedom. But look, in all honesty, nothing has changed for me other than I'm doing everything I do here in my home in Brookfield that I would be doing in the Premier's office. I have phones, video conferencing. We're on the phones all the time. With technology, you're able to do this. And more Islanders are in the same situation than I am and will continue to be as this evolves over the next few days. I would think that by this time next week, maybe most of us will be in some type of self-isolation like this. And but look, it's business as usual for me. I've been working harder than I've ever worked, like many people are, because this is an unprecedented challenge that we're facing. And we need to face those challenges head on and try to get through them. And that's exactly what I've been doing and will continue to do.
Premier King, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Health officials in British Columbia say 3 more people have died of the coronavirus.
All of them have been residents in the Lynn Valley Care Centre, where we know we've been dealing with an outbreak for the last week and a bit.
So that brings the total number of deaths from the outbreak in Canada to 4, all in BC. The province is also confirming 30 new infections, which puts the number of cases there at just over 100. Ontario has the highest number of COVID-19 cases at 177. So across the country, there are now more than 420 confirmed cases. Canada is closing its border, as we told you earlier, to most non-residents in an effort to slow the spread of COVID-19. But there's a notable exception. American citizens will be let in. The CBC's Julie Van Dusen has the latest for us tonight from Ottawa.
First, we will be denying entry to Canada to people who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents.
Canada's border is now tightening to foreigners. There are exceptions, the biggest carve-out, U.S. citizens, at least for now.
The level of integration of our two economies and the coordination that we've had over the past while puts the U.S. in a separate category.
Both countries rely on each other to provide essential goods that include foods and other products for our homes, etc.
Closing the border to foreign travelers is a flip-flop for the Trudeau government. It has resisted this move so far, saying it doesn't work because a virus knows no borders. But in the past few days, Trudeau has been getting a lot of pressure from several premiers to tighten up the border. To those Canadians abroad who are scrambling to get home, there could be financial assistance if needed. However, you will be barred from getting on a plane if you show signs of illness.
Anyone who has symptoms will not be able to come to Canada.
Also, Canadian passengers arriving in Canada will be funneled through just 4 airports, Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal, and can expect enhanced screening and be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. The Deputy Prime Minister says that will discourage American visitors.
Self-isolation for 14 days in Canada, that I don't consider to be something that a tourist would like to do for a holiday.
For Canadians who can't tap into employment insurance because their jobs are precarious or part-time, the government says they can expect news in the coming days about help to cover their basic expenses, including rent and groceries. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, in the global push to defeat the coronavirus outbreak, millions of people in Europe and around the world began a new week under wide-ranging lockdowns.
We're calling on every country and every individual to do everything they can to stop transmission.
Several countries have banned mass gatherings and are urging people to practice social distancing. Spain, with more than 9,000 cases, remains under a 15-day state of emergency. In France, schools, restaurants, and cinemas have been closed, with the authorities urging people to stay home. China continues to see far fewer new cases compared to the rest of the world. It has begun easing some restrictions and is getting its factories back up and running. But the coronavirus continues to ravage financial markets. The Dow Jones plunged again today, losing about 13% of its value. Here in Canada, the TSX didn't fare much better. Peter Armstrong reports from home tonight, where he's actually in self-isolation.
Running out of adjectives for just how bad a day this has been on the stock market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 3,000 points. That's nearly 13%, the biggest points drop in history and the third largest percentage fall in the entire history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The TSX fell 10%, the S&P fell 11%, the dollar went down, the price of oil continued to fall. This all, of course, after the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, took extraordinary measures last night, cutting interest rates almost to zero, going through an enormous bond buying, quantitative easing, essentially creating money out of thin air and injecting it into the economy, all aimed at stemming the tide and trying to slow some of this sell-off. It obviously didn't work, or it worked in terms of this could have been even worse. And a lot of this came from the spark here were numbers we got out of China, that at the peak of the health crisis there, the hit the economy took. Industrial production fell 13%. Retail sales fell more than 20%, giving North Americans an indication of just how bad the real economy gets hit if things do continue to get worse here. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, the epicenter of the global outbreak has really shifted to Europe and its close neighbors. In Britain, which now has more than 1,500 cases, is trying to toughen its response by clamping down on social life. CBC's Renee Filipponi has the latest.
The UK is now urging people to avoid social contact, stepping up the restrictions here after days of criticism that they weren't doing enough. At a press conference today, Boris Johnson is urging people who can work from home to avoid pubs, clubs, and social venues if they can. They're not ordering anything closed yet and say a decision like that could come, but figure most places will shut down over a lack of business. Now, officials are also lowering the bar for who should be put into isolation. Now, not just people who show symptoms, but also everyone in the household for 14 days. And it's likely in a couple of days, anyone over 70 will be advised to self-isolate for 12 weeks.
Clearly, what we're announcing today is a very substantial change in the way that we want people to live their lives.
At this point, schools in the UK will stay open, but Boris Johnson says all measures are possible in the future. England's chief medical officer said they will be scaling up testing to get a better sense of how widespread the disease is, but that England is likely just 3 weeks behind Italy when it comes to the peak here. Europe is now the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, with Italy, Spain, and France being hit hardest. Leaders across the continent are taking drastic steps to try and get a handle of the spread, with countries today including Germany and Switzerland joining France, Italy, and Spain by closing down restaurants, bars, shops, all various levels of lockdown across Europe now. The European Commission is proposing that the EU shut its borders to foreign travelers. That motion will be voted on by EU leaders at a video conference tomorrow.
Here in Europe, we are heavily affected by the virus. And we know that everything that reduces social interaction also reduces the speed of the spread of the virus. The less travel, the more we can contain the virus.
Some countries have taken the step to close borders within the EU, such as Germany and Poland. The European Commission has been critical of that, saying countries need to work together to cooperate and come up with a coordinated approach that will allow goods to move freely and assure economic stability. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
All right, here's a closer look at those hard-to-look-at financial numbers from today. So the Canadian dollar closed at 71.61 cents U.S. The TSX, that's a 52-week low today. Lots of volatility, big drop in crude prices, which we'll show you in a minute. So off by over 1,300 points. The Dow, nearly 3,000-point drop on the trading day today. And there's that drop in the price of oil, off by over $3 U.S. a barrel, $28.70 for the close there. Gold, not even buying into gold right now, off by $30.20 U.S. an ounce. Ryan Snodden now with our last peek at weather. And spring officially arrives Friday, but some wintry weather to contend with before that, Ryan?
Yeah, that's right, Louise. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Yes, spring is on the horizon. Yes, it will come in the form of some wet weather and some windy weather on Friday as well. But yeah, first things first. A little bit of snow to throw our way. And certainly, of course, even after spring arrives, we could see more snow. Likely will see more snow. But one last round here by the looks of it in terms of the official winter season. And it's not going to be much. We're looking at a couple of centimeters, 2, 3, 4 centimeters in most cases, as much as 5 centimeters, perhaps a shade bit more out towards the north and east. Based on the latest model guidance, a pretty good agreement that we're going to be in that 2 to 5 centimeter range. Now, as we look at our hour by hour, there are flurry chances for the next hour or so. Things clearing out for tonight and starting into the minus double digits tomorrow morning. So, yeah, a little extra work for the fireplace or the furnace through the overnight hours and into the early morning of Tuesday. Now, note for tomorrow evening that snow will cross the island through the evening hours, and there's that little bit of mixing potentially before we get to Wednesday morning as those temperatures briefly rise in the early morning hours of Wednesday before back to the freezing mark, which is generally where we will stay throughout the day on Wednesday. So pretty quiet for St. Patrick's Day overall. The flurries clear on Wednesday, looking at a mix of sun and cloud Thursday. There's the arrival of spring with some wet weather on Friday, and then we're clearing out but cooling down as we roll into the first weekend of spring. Louise.
Thanks, Ryan. And thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, PEI.